When we think about monsters, we may think of images such as Dracula, Frankenstein, or even werewolves. However, these images are of actors in costumes, not real monsters. When really, the monsters of the world don't sleep in coffins, not howl at the moon, and they're not created by mad scientists. But who are these monsters? What do they look like, and where did they come from? Well, to start, let's define monster. For our purposes, let's focus on the fourth definition specifically. A person so cruel, wicked, depraved, etc., as to horrify others. By this definition, a person would inflict pain unto others and not feel remorse, and perhaps feel pleasure. Keeping this in mind, let's look at the definition of a serial killer. A person who commits multiple, more than two, murders, especially similar ones, with no obvious motive, over a period of time with a cooling off period between each murder. Now, why would a person kill without motive? And how could they not feel remorse or guilt? Well, I intend to explain that as thoroughly as I can. First of all, let's look at an example of one of the most well-known serial killers in the United States, Ted Bundy. Bundy was described by female victims as handsome and charismatic. He was well-known and liked in school. He was said to be an average person blending in with society. He killed at least 35 people. Most other serial killers were also described as quite average, unextraordinary people before they were found guilty of ending numerous lives. But if on the outside these people seem normal, what is it that is so different about them that causes them to be capable of killing? In more than half of the interviews with serial killers done by the FBI, they found that their parents were abusive to the killers as children. Also, another study shows that 70% of serial killers grew up in a home with at least one parent being addicted to drugs or alcohol. So here, the assumption would be that nurture outweighs nature in the making of such a person. However, in this interview with Ted Bundy, Bundy states that this is not the case for him.
How did this moment come about?
That's the question of the hour, and one that not only people much more intelligent than I have been working on for years, but one that I've been working on for years and trying to understand. Is there enough time to explain it all? I don't know. I think I understand it, though. Understand what happened to me, to the extent that I can see how certain feelings and ideas developed in me to the point where I began to act out on them, certain very violent and very destructive feelings.
All right, let's go back then to those roots. First of all, you, as I understand it, were raised in what you consider to have been a healthy home.
Absolutely.
You were not physically abused, you were not sexually abused, you were not emotionally abused.
No way. And that's part of the tragedy of this whole situation, is because I grew up in a wonderful home with two dedicated and loving parents, one of 5 brothers and sisters. A home where we as children were the focus of my parents' lives, where we regularly attended church, 2 Christian parents who did not drink, they did not smoke, there was no gambling, there was no physical abuse or fighting in the home. I'm not saying this was Leave It to Beaver.
It wasn't a perfect home.
Well, no, I don't know that such a home exists, but it was a fine, solid Christian home, and nobody, I hope no one will try to take the easy way out and to try to blame or otherwise accuse my family of contributing to this. Because
So what physically is different inside the brain? Absolutely nothing. But what about how the brain functions? Ah, there it is. As you can see, the prefrontal cortex is seen to be comparatively silent in the brain of a psychopath. This area includes our judgment center, and a lack of function here leads to poor judgment. As you can see, there is a total blank near the center of the brain and an emotional center that is related to caring. Because of this lack of activity, psychopaths do not feel along with the rest of society. Because of this disconnect, they do not have the empathy to feel another person's pain. Usually, as seen in the interview with Bundy, these people do not even understand themselves. If they were unaware of the problem or do not want to get help, in most cases it will escalate to the harm of themselves or others. These human beings turn into what we define as a monster. In some cases, this is due to nurture, childhood trauma, or otherwise. But in other cases, psychologists cannot decipher a reason for the killer's unique brain function. These monsters are not in a fantasy world. They are in this one. They could be your next door neighbor. Their mask is their face. It hides a real monster.